welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and I'm the host of A Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. Welcome newcomers to the Facebook group, podcasts and our Teachific resources. We love hearing the diverse reasons why teachers across the world are joining. There is so much deep and creative literacy work going on in schools. Some of the recent comments from a Sydney teacher to improve my understanding of literacy instruction, from a Melbourne leader to keep up to date with resources and pedagogies, from a Whyalla leader, different tips and tools to support leading the improvement in literacy in our site. From another Whyalla teacher, further develop pedagogies in the area of literacy as a Year 2-3 teacher. From a UK leader, new ideas. From another UK teacher, I would like to share ideas and support and gain information into the latest research and strategies in relation to literacy in key stages 3 and 4. And from a Gippsland teacher in Victoria, to learn more. So if you're not a member of the Teachers Toolkit Facebook group, we would love you to join and introduce yourself to the group. And now, welcome to this podcast and welcome to Phil.
Thanks so much, Sharon. Great to be here and doing another podcast with you. I thought the topic today we've chosen for a very good reason, but before we do that, could we talk about why or how we choose these topics for podcasts?
I know people must actually wonder that sometimes. I think particularly because when I'm face-to-face with people, working with them, we often find ourselves saying, oh, wow, that would make a good podcast talking about that. So it must seem very random to people that we don't have anything to do with. But because we're working so closely with so many schools, so much of the work that we do is absolutely driven by the work that we are doing face-to-face with schools, with real concerns, with real...
In real classrooms. No, it's so authentic. It's great that we are really matching to what the need is. We're not just saying, oh, let's just do this podcast on this topic. It really is. Like, I've got a notebook where, whenever an idea comes up, I write it down. And it's usually from Sharon coming back from her school saying, I've noticed this. I reckon we should do a podcast on it.
Yeah, and I think it's also because not only have we noticed something, we're trying to help solve that conundrum or that question or that next step that people are trying to make. And so not only do I come back, like we have some pretty big debriefs at the end of days where, it's big conversations around really capturing the kinds of things teachers, have got running around in their heads and that are confronting them day upon day, the big questions about how to do things.
But you're looking for a common need where there's a number of teachers or schools that are coming across this thing?
I don't think that's what makes it important. I think it's...
All right, yep.
Well, I think every teacher a question asked. I take all things quite seriously in terms of when people have questions about, I want to be able to provide solutions, or at least not necessarily provide solutions, but to be able to talk through things with them so that we can come up with solutions.
Yep.
But sometimes we want to have not just a solution for that moment, we want a solution that can become part of what we do. So it's not a, right now I need a lesson on, or I need to fix this problem. It's all about thinking, okay, so what is this big thing that we're talking about, and how can we not only address it through conversation and through our planning or through our learning, but then how can we translate that into, like, what would be useful for everybody in two ways? What would be useful for us to share with others through the podcast about, wow, here's the learning and the thinking we've been doing. So then we think, wow, maybe that would be useful and helpful for other people who we don't see face to face, but they do seem to be common questions that arise, or common issues or problems, and I'm talking literacy here at the moment. I'm not talking about personal issues and problems. Yeah. But secondly, in trying to answer those questions, then it's, all right, so what might be a tool or a resource or a something that can relieve some of the, I'm going to say, cognitive load around that for teachers.
Definitely.
Where it's, I'm thinking through this, and okay, so now I've thought through that, but then how's that going to translate day upon day upon day upon day, or week upon week upon week in my class? And so that's what I always bring back with me then from any day in a school, is thinking, all right, what is it that I have already, what tool or resource has already been created that will address that need, or what hasn't yet been created, and let me get on with that. Let me think about how can I create that as a visual for a class, or as a set of anchor charts for a class.
But often setting up a routine for them, isn't it, that they can go into?
Yes, it is often a routine, and sometimes we need some resources that can help us establish that routine and have those things that are, that we can get tight on these are the things that count. Mm. And I think it's probably really important to talk more about that idea of routine as opposed to one-off things.
Yep.
Never about what's the quick fix right now for that. Mm-hmm. More about what can we set up, what can we be doing that can enable, so we as the enabling adult in the room, what can we be doing to enable our students to be able to...
Self-motivated, self-directed, self-regulated.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we need to be doing some, we're the ones then, the explicit teaching, the demonstrating through modelling, the talking things through, the showing how it's done.
Demonstrating through modelling is that part of explicit teaching that's the key.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And if we can demonstrate it through that modelling, then our students get to see what it looks like, what it sounds like, what actions they can now take. You don't have to take a step back though, demonstrating and modelling through the very process. So if we're modelling something relating to reading, then we're modelling it as we read.
Yep.
Not off a worksheet, not a YouTube clip of someone else telling us how this works, but we are modelling, that we're demonstrating through that modelling. If it's reading, through reading. If it's writing, through writing.
And the purpose is to really help them when they go into their independent work, they then have this powerful model in their heads.
Yeah. To transfer
into their own work, much more powerful if it's being modelled to them.
Yes.
Something really meaningful.
Yeah.
And they can see warts and all.
Yeah.
Mistakes the teacher might make, or if you're demonstrating a piece of writing that a student has written, whatever you're doing, it's modelling that And then it's how do we try that in our
Yeah.
own reading or writing?
Yes. Yep. And the modelling doesn't need to be an agonising 1 hour.
No,
The modelling
10 minutes.
short and sharp, so that we've got that, and in the modelling, what we are inviting or engaging our students to do is to actually be practicing it with us
Yep.
before they go to do it for
Definitely.
themselves. Anyway, I think we've got into a whole new I think we've done a podcast on this before, the whole
We have.
process of this.
But let me tell listeners what Sharon's day looks like, where one day she might be in a school, and to be in that school, she has prepared the day before, or if it's a workshop, it's for quite a few days where she's been preparing. And that's the in-school work. But then whenever there's a spare moment in the studio, Sharon is creating these resources that are responding to the needs in the schools, and she's working on that. And so when you see something on Teachific, you know that a lot of love and care has gone into it, and you know it's coming from the true basis of what's needed in schools.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I haven't plucked it out of nowhere. No. And I'm at an age where I'm drawing on a lot of lived experience around those things. I would hate anybody to think that when I create something, it's not with any disrespect to any professional, because if I didn't think this was worth someone's time to try, I would not put it out there.
No.
I'm not...
I think that's the key. You've had that lived experience. And I think teachers out there in podcast world are very wise if they are following along with somebody who is providing something from lived experience. It will be one of the keys to your success in the classroom if you are, because you're following someone who is a master in what they do, which is, that's what we learn from.
Yeah, yeah. And we really want to be generous with that sharing of lived experience and understandings, because we have been very privileged to have had lots of mentors who have been in our lives to help us reflect on our experience and to be in that constant mode of, I'm going to say, improvement, of solving the day-to-day things that we're faced with, but to solve them in ways that this whole idea of routines, I mean, that was something that for me with, postgraduate study was one of those things I thought about a lot in terms of how important it is for students to have routines, and routines of engagement, not routines of things being done to us, or fill in the gaps, but this routine of knowing how my day looks, so that I know that every day I have got time in my school routine. I have time to read. I have time to think about my reading. I have time to be shown how to get better at my reading through that there's even a routine of that one day a week I'm going to be shown, what do I do when I get to words that I don't know?
I have time to inquire about my spelling.
I have time to inquire about spelling. I have not just inquire, but investigate.
Yep.
Investigate so that I can use that knowledge from my investigation. Because if I investigate, then I'm going to be finding out how to use it.
Yeah. I think, Sharon, we're not saying we've got all the answers.
No.
Because we will be learning to the day we die, but we've come across some certain things like the inquiry approach or the workshop model, or we even formulated the 7 timeless T's of learning, because there are some key things that we know really take students deeper in their learning.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you said that, Phil. We in no way ever think we have all the answers, but we do like to solve. We do like to think about when teachers ask about things, we don't like to operate with binary solutions.
It's not this or that. This is a problem we're seeing out there, that people think it's either this or that. But it's a whole range of tools and strategies and tips and techniques that a teacher uses.
Yeah, a repertoire of them.
You pull from that repertoire in very clever ways, because, follow our podcast, guys, you will really choose and use the things that are going to work for you for those particular students. But the thing is that you will have this repertoire. If you don't know what the repertoire is, and someone comes along and said it's going to be this program or that program, well, no, I've got this great repertoire. I know it's not that program or that program. It's this range of things I can choose from for my particular students.
Yeah.
A great conversation there, Sharon, and probably one we can carry on with another podcast.
Yeah, but since that one isn't even the topic. I think maybe we haven't taken the time to sit down and actually share that with others, because what you, poor Phil, hear me doing a lot of the time is me being in, oh my goodness, I've got 1,000 things running through my mind right now about, I want to be able to think about this for this school, or I want to think about this for this teacher, I want to, what matches in for that group of teachers or that year level, what about leaders, so we are always trying to think through solutions, and sometimes we don't stop. I think this has been a good chance to just have a little stop and think about and let people know a bit more about, okay, how do we work? How do you get to hear the things that you get to hear from us, and how do you get to see the things that we create on Teachific? So those things, the big mystery of where does all that come from and how does that come about? Hopefully that's a little bit of an insight into us and the way we work.
Yeah. So one of our things over the last few years is to create lots of resources, and there are many on Teachific, and they're all searchable through categories and etc. But if you need anything you can't find it on there, just email us. We'll help you with finding something. The other thing we're going to be doing a bit more of is connecting a webinar with the work we're doing here. So this podcast, which we're about to announce, will have a webinar attached to it in later September. So keep an eye out for that webinar on our website. The idea of it is to show, demonstrate in action the things we talk about on the podcast, because they're things we can't do on the podcast that a webinar is better for. So watch out for that. We'd love you to join the webinar in later September and see you there. All right. Anyway, the topic for today, Sharon, is good writers revise and edit their writing. And the teaching struggles for this? Well, I found this in my classroom. Students find it a struggle to revise their writing.
I know, we can all hear the groans right from here, can't we?
Mr. C, I've done my writing. I don't see any way I can improve it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's all yours. They often don't see a need for revising their writing. Big problem in schools. Put your hands up, folks, those who have that problem. Yeah, I can see lots of people. Okay. And teachers are unsure how to address this. What to teach, what do I actually teach them, and how to teach it so that it transfers into their writing. Now, this is one of those key struggles where Sharon went away from the school and thought, what resource can I produce that's going to help this? And so there's something on Teachific today that you can have a look at too. But first of all, we're going to talk about, drilling down into this problem and how we can address it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm just going to go straight back to the first thing about, students do find it a struggle to revise their writing. And so, that clearly is, the piece that they've done their writing and they're done.
Yep.
They're done.
No more.
Yeah. So, it took all my energy to do this.
Yep.
Now, not doing any more. Yep. So there's a couple of quick tips here, actually, that this term revising or the revision of things. Working with a deputy in one of the schools who, like me, has a lot of lived experience, and said, we never called it revising. We always called it recrafting. And immediately I loved that shift from, revise into recraft.
Nice.
But there's also another word that I have found in 3 schools where we're really looking at this revising and editing part, where we have changed that term entirely in these 3 schools now, where instead of revising, we're saying improving. And then all of a sudden, we've got a forward action that means, yes, we can recraft. And I like that term, crafting and recrafting. It means we've got some craft there, but we can add some more. But improving is that lovely term that goes, so what I've got is good, but I can actually make it, there's some parts, where it can be even better. And here's the other big trick or tip around that, is that when we go into the revising or improving stage, it's good not to just necessarily leave it to the end and feel like we've got to do a whole lot at the end of all of this work that we've done, all of this drafting that we've done. If we do all of that and then get to revising or improving, it's so much harder than if we are doing some revising along the way, some improvement making, so that we can actually add on to that and learn from it and apply that in the next bit that we're doing.
So not writing a whole piece and then revising it, but actually doing it in sections.
Yeah, because so I guess where this now leads is that if we talk about the drafting process, we can actually think about that in some really helpful ways. So for our foundation writers, for our 5-year-olds, when they're writing, of course, we're not talking about them doing big revisions or improvements of their work without somebody with them. So they'd be doing that with someone, but we want them to get on when they go to write. The key thing is really about go and get your ideas down. Try your words as best you can and use your drawings, because that's an important part of drafting for them. Now, what about year 1s, year 2s? Drafting, especially for them, is still in the time that we've got, let's write as much as we can in this time, and don't be constrained too much about, I've got to fix things along the way. Yes, we might say to them beforehand, as what's something that we've been focusing on. So we might say, remember we've been doing a lot of work around making sure we have capital letters at the beginning of our sentences and that our sentence ends with the punctuation that it needs. Now, that might be a review that we do before we write, and then let's get them, if we've done lessons on that before and how that works. All right, so now let me just go back a step. If I've demonstrated through modelling what I'm doing as a writer with those capitals and those full stops, then that should be something that I should be able to then say, as writers today, what are we going to make sure we're including? And to empower them to say, we'll be thinking about using our full stops and our capital letters at the beginning of a sentence, because we've been thinking about that and we've explored it and we've seen you do it and we've been trying that out in our writing, so that we want those things to become part of the automatic things that they're doing, so that they're not always having to go, don't worry about any of that, just do it in the revision. No, Don't do it in the revising part. Yes, during revising I can check on that, but whatever we teach, we want to hold them to applying those things.
As they initiate their writing, they're bringing those skills into their writing as they go.
Yeah.
Not, that's maybe they're revising in their heads. As they're writing, they're kind of saying, these are the things I'm watching for in my head.
Right. Yes. And we need to make that visible, anchored somewhere. What are the things we are thinking about? Because we have been focusing on that because it's been explicitly taught through and explicitly modelled. So good writers, what are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
And then let's chart some of those things. Even in our drafts, we would talk about that we've got kind of three approaches to drafting. And I just want to bring those forward because there's some tips and tricks around that I think make a difference to how our students then see the revising process. So drafting, and I'm going to go say year 6. I've got these 3 strategies that I should be drawing on at different times. So fast writing of ideas for revision later. So let me get all my thinking down. So let me have an uninterrupted block of time. And let's not necessarily make it 40 minutes to begin with, but let's set it as like a 15-minute write or a 10-minute write or a 5-minute write, depending on, I wouldn't be saying do a fast write for my 5-year-olds, but this idea of doing a fast write means getting out of my own way to get my ideas down, to get my thinking going, to let it go somewhere. Now, at this point, we don't say to students, don't worry about any of your spelling, don't worry about any of anything, just write. You do want them to have in their minds that fast writing should be incorporating more and more things that we've been teaching over time. Because I don't think it's okay for year 6s, I'm just picking year 6s, the top of the primary school ladder here, where teachers just saying over and over again, I have got year 6s who are still not putting in capitals at the beginning of a sentence and full stops. That's not okay. We need that to be part of what they automatically do.
Yeah, in a fast write, at year 6, you would definitely expect that.
Yes. Yeah. So we need to catch ourselves. What are we saying about our expectations here? When we explicitly teach any of these things, then let's anchor it and let's say, okay, today in our writing, let's think about this. If we're doing a fast write, still think about how we're applying this. Because if we can start applying it, and we're doing that, we can only get good at it by using it in our writing.
Yeah.
So if we can then be using it, oh my goodness, we've just had a whole lot of practice with it without the teacher creating a worksheet. So we really need these things being applied into the real things that we're doing, so fast writing of ideas for revision later. And that is a key element of any revision we do. We shouldn't be doing worksheets that get children to revise other people's errors in sentences or in, where we create. Please don't create the kinds of things where there's a whole lot of errors that you've put in there or the worksheet creator has put in there for students to fix or revise. That's not teaching them how to address their errors.
Yep.
We want them addressing the kinds of things they are still coming to an understanding of. All right. Fast writing. So we can...
You mean, is that the same as quick write?
Fast write, yeah, it's got a number of names. Fast write, quick write, lightning write, speed write. But a fast write or a quick write.
I think we've on the Teachific resources where there is a title, I think it is quick write. Yep.
All right, so I can do fast writing of ideas for revision later. And I might do fast writing, of quite a bit of text before I revise it. Or I might do fast writing with ongoing revision. And that might be, I've done a section of something as a fast write. Now let me revise that. Or I might have written, a poem. Let me revise that before I go on with another poem, rather than sometimes we do see some of us, we'll get caught in out of that writing process, we'll do plan, then we'll do draft, and then start revising. It can be really useful to draft, revise, revise.
Small sections.
Yeah. Because when we are doing that revising, we are taking that new learning with us into the next part that we're writing.
And even if it's a section of writing, I want you to revise that. How do you stop the student groaning, Sharon, as a teacher?
Well, if we talk about it being part of, are you talking about, I hear the biggest groans coming when I've got a whole big piece now to revise.
But you don't hear it with the short pieces?
No.
Why is that?
Well, because it's manageable.
Okay.
And I'd only be focusing on, I might just focus on one thing. We must always limit it to how much we revise. I might say revise this paragraph.
With your eye on this thing.
Yeah. Or revise this to, is this a paragraph? Has this got its ideas contained? I'll talk a bit more about the strategies in a moment, but this idea of, it's when we say, if we use the global, all right, I want you to revise your work now. Well, what are they revising?
They don't know. It's not been modelled.
No. And that's not explicit enough. That's not. And so revise, well, if you ask me to revise my work, I'm sitting there going, well, what do they want me to revise? Right. So then the other kind of drafting that we can do is that slow, deliberate drafting with ongoing revision. And that's for much older writers, that we get into a slow and deliberate rather than the fast revise. So I'm just saying that for drafting, we can go through those processes. Now, when it comes to revising, there are actually a whole lot of strategies that we should explicitly teach our students to be able to engage in when it comes to revising. So rather than saying, revise your work, what can we say? So I'm just going to go through the 7 things that we can explicitly bring to our students and empower them to be doing.
By modelling it.
By modelling in authentic writing. So as teacher in our own writing that we've been doing in class, if students are writing, I should have modelled, my attempts at those things.
And that can be in a big book.
Yeah.
That kids can go back to, you can go back to.
Yes.
Rather than on a whiteboard or where it just gets wiped off. And
Yeah. Yes, it is good, anchor it. Theirs is anchored. Random thought here, but I am also going to just throw in with one of the teachers, happens to be a year 6 teacher, who has absolutely shifted from drafting being only word processed to doing all their drafting now, apart from a child or two who may have word processing as part of their modified learning plan. This teacher has got children drafting on paper, handwriting their drafts, Now, he has noticed in just a term, or not even a term, 5 weeks of doing that, the difference that has made to the volume that students are writing, to the clarity of thinking that they are demonstrating. He's noticed a whole lot of improvements already in the way that they are getting their ideas down. Now, I know I'm jumping all over the place here. This is what my brain's like sometimes. But I am also going to just add in here that when we draft on paper, if it's in a book, draft on the right-hand side of an open page, that, double page, and use the left-hand side as a space for revising, noting, adding things in, trying something else out. So leaving that space on the left-hand side works really well for really any of our year 2 and up.
What a top idea.
Thank you. Right, but it's
a valuable idea.
A valuable idea.
Yeah.
And students actually see its function and find that it gives them space to think and do that revising, that improving, where it doesn't seem like a chore. They feel like they are the real writer, by having this set out in that way. Just like having, we'll talk about with revising, editing, working with a different colour pen is a really great way to be able to, really see the things that we are changing or modifying.
Well, Sharon, we'll take a break there, and I think we'll call this part 1, and next week people can go on to part 2. So thank you everyone for listening to part 1 today, and join us again next week for the rest of this podcast.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, I shall. There'll be more rambling from me.
We love the rambles. Okay, bye everyone.
Right. Thanks everyone. Catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.